Everywhere he went, he collected interesting objects he found in thrift shops, variety stores, and even on the streets.
Okay, so he really didn't have that much what?
Money.
That much money. So he worked at different odd jobs so that he can make ends meet. Joseph loved the idea of travel and extensively researched the cultures of many countries, especially France. However, his shyness and discomfort around people for any length of time, as well as his sense of responsibility for his brother, meant that he never actually left New York. So why did he leave New York?
I probably to resist comfort and shyness.
He was shy. And what else?
He didn't have much money, but I think he can make money somewhere
All
else.
right, money, shyness, and lastly, what else? Who did he have to take care of?
His brother.
Yeah, his brother had cerebral palsy. Have you heard of cerebral palsy before? All right, let me show you really quick. Cerebral palsy. No, I'll show you my phone because I went to sleep and it's going to take forever. All right, so this is cerebral palsy. It's basically a disease that may cause you to even become disabled. I'll show you right now. And there's a lot of information on it right now, though, but it affects the body movement and muscle coordination.
Like paralyzed?
Yeah, it can. Yes, definitely. There's some people that still walk and they still have, they can still have mobility, but in a lot of cases, they don't have mobility. So it affects your brain, your muscle coordination, etc. So he felt like he really needed to help his brother out. In his late 20s, Joseph began to put together the objects he had collected into shadow boxes. Each of these boxes represents some aspect of his dreams of freedom or social connection and of love. He used metal hoops and bars, string marbles, wine glasses, feathers, shells, postcards, programs for shows, paper doll parts, and even postage stamps. Armed with a little glue and a pair of scissors, Joseph considered all these objects fair game for his box collages. So what is a shadow box?
Bunch of stuff he put for his box collages.
Right. So it's basically a box. I'm pretty sure you've seen it before. It's a box, and then you put different objects in it, and it represents a different type of art or memory or something of the sort. All right. Joseph also idolized a number of famous dancers and opera stars who performed in the city. He put together files of photos and scraps of information about them. Many of these bits and pieces ended up in boxes he created as tributes to his favorite stars. While Joseph was certainly indebted to the influence of artists such as Max Ernst, Marcel Duchamp, and Kurt Schweitzer, whose works he had seen in galleries and studied, his own skills as an artist were entirely self-taught. He began to display his boxes in local galleries, and word soon spread out about the magical creations of Joseph Cornell. His collage technique also extended into filmmaking. He took existing films and chopped them up, reassembling pieces of them to create entirely new films. In Joseph Box's little objects that might seem insignificant all by themselves took on a whole new meaning in combination with pieces of maps, diagrams of constellations, and scraps of advertisements. Throughout Joseph's career as an artist, he had to supplement his income with a number of jobs he hated. However, he was successful enough that artists from all over the world heard about his work and came to meet him. He became friends with a great many of well-known artists and writers, and his work began to sell for high prices later in his career. Eventually, he was able to focus solely on his artwork, creating a large workshop in his mother's basement. He hired a constantly shifting cast of young art assistants to help him organize and catalog all the objects he collected. Joseph fascinated the luminaries who met him, which led to exhibiting collections of his work in prominent museums in New York City, such as Guggenheim and the Museum of Modern Art. Joseph became friends with a great many people and forged personal connections from around the globe. but his fears kept him disengaged from the world on a regular basis. Why? Why did his fear keep him away from people? Because he was very what?
He was very shy.
Yes. He was never quite able to overcome his shyness. His wistful remark to one of his sisters near the end of his life is telling. I wish I hadn't been so reserved. Instead of physically connecting with the world, Joseph Cornell poured all of his visions and dreams into his boxes. He created irresistible visual stories that continue to inspire artists and writers to this day. So, we know that he is what can you say about Joseph Cornell? He's a what?
He's a shy but very talented boy.
Yeah, very talented artist. Well, he started out as a boy, but
he's a man.
Yes, yes. All right, so how would you describe the early life of Joseph Cornell? His early life?
Hard.
Very hard. Why?
Because he didn't have that much money.
He didn't have money.
His dad was ill.
His dad was ill.
His brother's ill.
Yes, and he took all type of jobs, right, to help.
Try to help them.
Right. What was unusual about Cornell's shadow boxes?
They had all different varieties of type of stuff in there.
Yeah, all type of stuff that people wouldn't find interesting or important, and he brought light to those things. Very good. Number 3, compare Cornell's life to his art. How was his life like his art?
He pulled everything from his childhood memories and stuff and put it into
together. Okay, and how were they different? How was his art different?
His art was different from other people because I think he mostly used his lifestyle, not other people's lifestyle, and he tried to do what happened to him to show his affections and ways.
Okay, so he couldn't travel around because he was very shy, right? But what did his art do?
His art brought people to him.
Very good. Yes. All right, and then the question that you're going to answer on paper is, if you were to give advice to a young artist using Joseph Cornell's as an example, what would you say? Can you give me a little bit of what you're going to write about?
It doesn't matter how poor you are, just like the last story. It doesn't matter how poor you are, what happens to you doesn't mean that you can't do things that attract people to you. You can be shy, you can be quiet, it doesn't matter. You can be blind, whatever you want. But if you do it good and do things that you like that's good, that will draw attention to you, because you don't have to try to bring your attention to somebody else. They'll come to you.
Okay. What could you tell me that you've experienced over these last 5 lessons?
Mostly all of these are about kind of like friendship and real life things that you can just do what you want, because nothing can stop you from doing what you want.
Okay, nothing can stop you, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so as far as motivation, because we know that was one of the reasons why you were having issues, and you're about to start a new year, what do you hope to gain from your new comprehension? Okay, and let's say if you are in a classroom and you are not interested in the topic and you're not engaged, what are you going to do to kind of change that?
Try to pull things like real life things I like and probably put it together with it to see if they'll go together.
Oh, your connection. Mm-hmm. We call it your connection. Yeah. So you're going to try to connect with the text. Mm-hmm. Okay. And is there anything else that, any skills or anything that you've learned thus far that you think that will be able to assist you in your future endeavors?
To go over my questions.
Look over your questions. Because you have a tendency to just read without even looking over your questions. What are the skills? Is there anything else?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for helping me out.
You're welcome.
And hopefully I helped you out as well.
You did.
All right.